Well, it's at night. The hurricane seems to be mostly passing, although there'll be some post-hurricane rains and winds and things. I'm pretty happy about that. I'm not real happy that my internet is out completely at night. I just tried to use my phone, and I have no phone signal up here. I don't know if I could get a phone antenna or something. But I don't like being out of communication. Basically, all my systems are failing, and that puts me in a bad spot. I'm having some water problems with the drinkability of the water in my system. And normally I buy drinking water for people who are visiting, but I didn't do that for me. So I'm drinking kind of brownish water. That's not real great. But I'm still optimistic, because I might as well be. And tomorrow will come, and I'll get more things done. I'll be back on the computer, hopefully, although the problem with the hurricane is it's so cloudy that I don't have enough electrical power to run my computer. So I do have a backup generator that I could try and run, but it makes me nervous to do that. It's far away, and I can run it through the solar system and power that up. If I run my computer directly off of it, it can blow up my computer. And I've had that happen before a long time ago when I first got here before I had solar power. So it's just too many system failures, and the usual difficulties. But at least I ate some food. I spent 2 times in the last month or 2 where I just didn't eat for 4 days, and drank too much twice. But I have a little sparkle of joy in my life right now. Her name is Frida, and she is now going to be a Bosque resident. So I'm working with her because under these difficult conditions, it's very important that I pay a lot of attention to her and help her be a good girl in this space. So what else? Donations haven't gone well yet, and that's because of me, that I haven't communicated the vision well enough, or perhaps not a vision that anyone cares about. A lot of people talk about things, and I'm doing a lot of things that really matter. The agricultural things I'm doing really matter for the future of the world. Because right now they're just draining aquifers and overusing water, wasting water. The entire industrial culture is doing things in the wrong way. It doesn't mean the whole world is. A lot of people don't have access to the industrial culture. So, anyway, I'm trying. If you want to, you can forward this. I'll probably have to post it tomorrow because I have no way to post anything. I'm out. I have no backup system up here. There's battery systems I could have as extra battery systems. That would be great. And those are kind of expensive. There's all kinds of solutions, but I've kind of over the years let things get kind of rustic, and I don't have any resources left to actually fix it. The other thing to donate for is planting. I have people that will help me, but I got to pay them. Volunteers are not actually useful for that. They're nice people, but that's not what they're good at. But I have local friends who I've worked with for years, and they're great people, and it supports their families so they can do things like send their kids to school, because there's actually school supplies and things they have to buy, or if they need medicines for their family. So it's a complex situation, and with the communication I've done so far, I don't know why someone would donate to the project, but if you know people who know me and trust me to some degree, at least that I'm doing something interesting and kind of out there, then feel free to forward this video to them, and join in Patreon donations if you want a subscribing donation or one-time donations. And that puts together a team of people who allow me to do really amazing, great things. It would also allow me to host other visitors, although I don't know if I'm in the mood for hosting rich travelers who are trying to travel to poor places as cheap as they can. Not a big fan of that. It seems like rude, really. And so I'd rather work for the people who trust me and the people who know that I'm trying to produce interesting things. And, I need to up my game on the quality of my communication. But it's, difficult to do that when you're semi-insane in the forest. And, I've been here for 17 years, quite a bit of it alone or under difficult conditions. Well, conditions have gotten difficult enough now where I can't even communicate anymore. So I'm going offline. And you won't be hearing from me, I don't think, unless I can figure out some real smart stuff. And even then, I won't be secure in my position. So that's a real direct request for support for anybody who believes in what I'm doing. And it's a complex project. There's lots of aspects to it, which is one of the things that makes it so difficult. But that's my direct request. It's up to you whether I survive and even can continue this project. I'm tempted all the time to just bail out. Like, why am I bothering to do this? Why not just go and live like a normal person and have luxuries and happiness and real friends, So it's up to you, your choice. And I know that on my part, I have to do better. I'm not questioning that at all. And I'm certainly not blaming anybody for, anything, the situation I'm in. I'm not begging. It's just, if you want that, that's how you'll get it. And I'll definitely know that, I'll take personal responsibility for my situation, but I just can't do it anymore. And that's my fault that I've let so many systems get old and then I haven't asked for this before. So that's my message, and I'll send it out later. It's going to be a long night. I'm happy that the rains are stopping, although I'm really happy that they're here, because that means I can start planting. And all these, decade of plant reproduction, I've got stuff that can go in the ground that is now mature enough that it'll survive. So we'll see what happens. Thanks for any help, and I hope I can serve you well, and I hope that we together can serve the world, because we need big solutions for the problems we're in. Good night. It is a rainy, cold, and dark night. It's a big storm out on the coast, and it's passing by now. I'm hoping tomorrow's going to be a gorgeous day. We can get back to planting. I must say that I've been really disturbed over the last year or so with the pandemic. And of course, the accident I had 2 years ago was disturbing, breaking both my legs. But watching so much hate become normal, and watching the media focus on the extreme left and right, which it's really not that simple, has been depressing. I think we're being set up for a civil war. And I mean that. That's not hyperbole. The things that these people are doing that are somehow acceptable is not acceptable. And I think that the people in the middle who want peace and who want justice and want the government to follow the law should speak up. And I know they're frightened. I find my own friends, many of them, quite frightening. The extremely hateful speech that they are spewing out while supposedly being against hate speech, and people who are promoting censorship of the other side. That is not American. I don't recognize the America that's been going on. And I think some of that is because people have been really stressed with the pandemic. But it was there before. It's been growing since the 80s. When I was in college, the manipulation of the educational system, the division of people, the increasing economic division, it's disappointing. And I'm disappointed in many of my own friends. And I don't know whether I should try and state that to them and fix it. I know I'll lose them as friends, because then I'll become the enemy. And I feel like I'm pretty moderate. I do want freedom. I want lots of freedom for a lot of kinds of people. Kind of mostly everybody. And I'm disappointed that the land of the free is the one that incarcerates the most people. And I'm disappointed, people are so pissed off at Trump. And I'm disappointed that Biden's doing the same thing. He just increased the nuclear program that Trump was setting up. And it seems bizarre to me that people are falling for that. The people who hated Trump. I know Trump's a buffoon. I think even Trump supporters, most of them understand that. But perhaps they were desperate for something different than standard issue corruption. And they were hoping for draining the swamp. They were hoping for getting rid of the deep state. And that obviously didn't happen. But now we're back to just total corruption. I don't recognize the U.S. government as being a valid government because they don't follow the law. And I don't want to live in a country that has so many military bases all over the world. Other countries don't have military bases all over the world. Mexico doesn't have any. And so I finally live in a peaceful country with problems. I have no rose-colored glasses about that. But I'm very disturbed, and I'm very disappointed in many of my own friends. I want us to find love again. I want us to, at minimum, find acceptance of other kind of people who have different views than us. Sound like a hippie, but I guess I am. I want love and peace. And part of that is that we need to change how we treat the earth. We are destroying our own environment. And it's the people in the industrial countries doing it worse than any other. If we look at the emissions, for example, from China, a lot of that is building things for the industrial world. And so that kind of goes on our account as well, our ecological account. And they're destroying their own people and their own environment to do it. I don't know what to tell you. I hope you can figure out how to make decisions in your own life regarding that. I would love it if people reduced their consumption immensely. And I think the pandemics actually may have some upsides, some good sides, that maybe it's a shock for people, that there are serious problems we have. And this is not the last one at all. We have existential threats to civilization. It's not hyperbole when I say civilization is going to fall. If we don't change what we're doing, you're going to watch civilization fall, and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be the most horrible thing you've ever witnessed, and maybe you won't live that long to see it very long, but your grandchildren might. And I don't know how fast it's going to happen. I don't know which parts of things will collapse first, but I know that once collapse starts, we won't be able to stop it. One collapse will lead to another. And if anything that we can learn from the pandemic, it's the absolute fragility of so many of our systems, including our rights. And I have mixed thoughts on how that was all handled. I'm lucky enough to be able to live very removed from it. I haven't seen what you've seen. I've gotten to hide out at great cost to me, but, it's my choice. But I hope we can figure out how to get our shit together. Because if we don't, shit is going to hit the fan. In fact, it may be too late to stop it. There's people who think that. And I partly agree with him that we may just be too far gone. That's a depressing thought. I would rather think that each person can work to figure out how to fix their interpersonal relationships, to fix how they deal with products and their own lifestyle and their energy use, and that we can all get on board with creative flourishing of ideas of how we can change how we live. Because we can't just live like emperors. We can't expect this to continue. And the green solutions that are proposed by many aren't going to be good enough at all. They're fake solutions. And I'm a guy who's a big, green kind of proponent. I live on solar power. I live on very little. I don't drive. And I also am sympathetic that a lot of people are in positions where they can't change very many things. They're trapped in their system, or so they think. But if too many people remain trapped in that, and if not enough people make real changes, then we all die. Human extinction is possible. At minimum, the collapse of civilization. So I hope you take that very seriously, and that we could have some fun with creative solutions. Stop shitting in clean water. Change how we use water agriculturally. And decide we don't need most of what we think we do. Now, the people who are going to hear this and listen probably are few, and it could be that it doesn't matter because other people are going to keep consuming as much as they can. And I'm not going to blame just the rich people. My friends are the rich people. You're probably a very rich person on a worldwide scale. So I hope you can interpret this in whatever way you're able to in your life, even though oftentimes we feel great constraints. And I'll do what I can do. I've chosen a very odd path, a very difficult path, at great expense and pain. But I feel comfortable that I'm making hard choices that will be useful to other people as well. And not everybody has to do what I'm doing. In some sense, it's a luxury to do what I'm doing. And in other sense, it's a total pain. I would like you to experience some of the pain of changing civilization before it gets changed for us. Because we can either create a better world or the world will fall as we know it. Probably a little bit of both is going to happen. So I do wish you the best of luck. I wish you great love for each other. And let's imagine a world that's full of prosperity, that has greater prosperity for everybody, and peace, because we're not very good at peace either. Perhaps the only two U.S. politicians at the federal level who I think have any merit that I know of is Tulsi Gabbard and Rand Paul. Tulsi Gabbard is a Democrat, and Rand Paul is, in theory at least, a Republican. And you notice Tulsi couldn't get anywhere near being considered for the presidency, for running for it. And I don't know that Rand Paul has yet, but he's an option for the future. But Tulsi Gabbard's actually electable and likable. She speaks well. She's anti-war, and both parties should be anti-war. The entire country should be anti-war. Soldiers should be anti-war. War is going to come back and bite us hard, and it's probably too late to stop that from happening. We've messed with too much stuff, and we've got too much invested in the military-industrial complex. The budget on that is astounding. And we do evil stuff that we don't admit to. You know, that's un-American. And I think that both of those candidates, both of those Congress people, actually would want the U.S. government to follow the Constitution. Because if you go down every article of the Constitution, there aren't a lot that we just don't ignore, which makes that government an invalid government. They're not following the basic law of the land. And corruption is rampant in every other way. I don't recognize America anymore. I think there's an America out there that's in the middle that wants things to be better. But the way things are set up, nobody good's ever going to get in power. There's too many laws, too many regulations. They just keep growing. Tax system's all messed up. Americans are essentially slaves. The money system is messed up. It's fake money. Inflation eats away anything you have. It's complex. It's complex stuff, but I think that people can understand it. You know, you look at the warnings of a lot of people who originally were involved with setting up America or managing it for a long time, and they warned us. Eisenhower warned us. John F. Kennedy warned us. People beyond that whose names I don't even remember. You know, it's the whole banking system. You don't own your own money. You'll always lose. Total corruption. Regulations for no reason. Why can't I make food and sell it to someone in the United States? And many people will respond, well, it's too dangerous. There'd be food poisoning and everyone would die and stuff. Why can they do it where I live now in Mexico? You can sell food to your neighbor because you're not trying to kill your neighbor. People feed their families. I mean, should we make it illegal to feed your family because you might poison them? Some bad thing can happen somewhere, but, you know, you can't ride in the back of a truck. I grew up riding in the back of trucks. It's extremely efficient. In a lot of ways, the U.S. has become so wealthy that they can handle the economic burden of ridiculous laws and controls. But that doesn't work forever. And it doesn't leave money for infrastructure. And even now, when there's some big government program, they just print more money. And that causes inflation. The money supply increases. And it's directly stealing from you. It's a tax on your wealth. And it doesn't affect the wealthy. When you look at income inequality, it comes from those kind of policies. That we can't just have a straightforward economy where people are working to get ahead and have their children have better lives than they did. The things that made America great, the things that used to draw people to America. People still come to America. They still want to. And, you know, my friends down here in Mexico, they all go up there and work because they can make more money up there. But the entire economic system of the United States is actually extremely fragile. It's fake. I have more faith in the future of Mexico than I do in the United States, and that's why I live here. And I know there's problems. But it's got a lot of hard-working young people. They're working on corruption. And, you know, there's a saying, it's, poor Mexico. so far from God and so close to the United States. You know, there's a love-hate relationship there. There's a lot of reasons why the United States did so well before, and some of that was because of freedom. Not all of it. There's all sorts of evil stuff, you know, you can look for in history. But a lot of really good stuff, too. A lot of people fought very hard for freedoms that worked for a lot of people. And that's why still, even with the corruption that we have in the United States, people still want to go there because there's residual benefits from it. But the dollar can fall. Empires tend to fall. They get too top-heavy, too arrogant. And when they fall, they don't fall well. And so what's the next empire going to be? China? I'd prefer that not happen. I'd prefer that, you know, countries live in peace and that they take care of their people, they take care of their land, and that freedom spreads to all people, and diversity, and protecting all kinds of people, which means that even though feminism has gone insane in the United States, I want to see feminism spread across the world in terms of women having rights. Unfortunately, it's really weird in the United States. I don't hear feminists talking about that. They want feminists for them. They're not too worried about the rest of the world. And I'm not talking about Europe. I'm talking about Africa, and I don't know a lot about India, the Middle East, you know. I don't know. There's a lot of hypocrisy with all this stuff. Perhaps there'll be a wave of young people that wake up by reading history, which is also often lies, so you have to do that very cautiously, and who decide that freedom works best. Now, there's caveats to that, and one of the issues I have is that I don't really want people to have freedom to destroy the planet. And so the externalized costs of economic activity often can do that. We're going to have to change how we live. And I don't know how to make that happen, to be honest, because no government can make it happen. If a government was to say, we're going to use less energy, we're going to pollute less, for real, not just greenwashing bullshit, then that government would be overthrown by the people, because people want to be consumers, the vast majority of them. So I don't know if there's any way out of this. I don't know if there's any with the problems that I see, the set of motivations that different groups have, it's hard for me to imagine a world in which we kind of woke up and said, hey, let's not do this. Overpopulation is getting fixed with population growth slowing, and that's actually good. It's economically very difficult because we are built for growth. In fact, all organisms tend to always just use up more resources until they clash with the limits of it. And if we do that, then we'll end up with a civilization that needed those cheap resources that we uniquely as an animal on the planet can use. The cheap fossil fuel energies that everything is built on. As those become more expensive, we won't just suddenly run out one day, but as they become more expensive and the alternatives are based on those as well, then we will have to learn to conserve, and we won't know how. We'll have big systems, big cities that can't survive. You know, and so even without a big catastrophe like the grid going down, which would be a big catastrophe and cause millions and millions of deaths, even without something that bad, it just gets tougher for us. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And the rich people are far more weak than the poor. That's another reason I'd rather live here. Now, Mexico City's not entirely poor. There's plenty of wealth in Mexico. It's not a poor country. But in a rural area like where I live, people are used to living with a lot less. But they have enough. Now, of course, the people who don't have enough in the world, I would love to see them have enough. Which means get them LED lights, get them solar panels, make it so they can work at night, make it so that they can have clean water, stop stealing their water. You know, because a lot of big corporations and even agriculture steals water. And we have a hard time, even in the U.S., stopping that because then the prices go up. And we want the cheap food. So I'm not at all against helping the world's poor. I would recommend that. A lot of the world's poor's problem comes from corruption of their own sort. You know, we can blame the United States for everything in the world, but there's plenty of blame to go around. The overpopulation one is tricky. A lot of people think that if we have decreasing population that we're somehow killing people off. No, we're just not creating them. And then we have the tricky problem of learning how to live as degrowth happens. And then we could get to a sustainable world population, which I actually think is probably around 2 billion. You could pick 1 billion. Some people say 500 million. I think we could probably sustainably, with the technology we have, getting smarter, we could probably get down to 2 billion. And then the oceans would start to restore because we fished out the oceans. And we could start to restore agricultural land and use it differently. That might not be as easy or profitable, but would actually be healthier food for us and provide more jobs. Because we now have, it used to be a lot of people were involved in agriculture. Now almost no one is, by comparison. So all these problems are all, this interconnected web is the thing. And so it's hard to understand it all. And I spent my life studying it. I've studied philosophy of it. I've studied science of it. And I'm no big expert on one part of it, but I do see how it fits together. And the way it fits together now is absolutely fragile and untenable. We cannot continue doing what we're doing. It won't happen. Collapse is going to happen. And I know that some people have made near-term predictions for collapse. Like, you know, in 10 years, everything's going to fall apart and everybody's going to die. And I hate those kind of predictions because they probably won't. We have efficiencies that we can add in. Our technologies change. But the overall statement is still true. We will collapse doing what we're doing. So when we find falling populations, it actually encourages me because that's at least one thing where we're going in the right direction. Not everywhere, but as people have education and health care, they make decisions not to have 12 kids. And of course, infant mortality matters for that because it used to be you had to have a lot of kids because a bunch of them were going to die. And now they probably won't. So, you could have 2 kids. That should be plenty. My personal choice is to have 0 kids. That's a choice a lot of people are making. You could have 1 kid. You could make sure they're socialized well and that they are a good person. So you don't have like only kid syndrome or something. But, yeah. And we can also stop being such culturally judgmental towards everybody. Like, I hate to hear it when people are like, oh, you have to have kids, you have to do it. And it's like, well, actually you don't. And you'd be just fine. In fact, it's a favor to the world not to have a kid. could talk a long time about all the different problems in the world. And, I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm tired. It's been a long couple of days. It's been a long couple of months. But there are choices we can make outside of what our culture taught us. We don't have to be trapped in the cultural systems, and we don't have to trap others. We don't have to kill people who don't believe as we do. We could change how education works. We have the technology to do it now. The old-style classroom is very inefficient and dumb. A teacher's time should not be spent saying the same thing over and over. Just stick it on video and then have question and answer sessions so that you can have intelligent conversations with the few students who actually can think and give a shit. We can stop having certificationalism, where you have to have a degree to get a job, but you really don't need the degree to do the job. When I was a hiring manager, I hired people who were not qualified, according to what HR says, for the job, but they could do the job very well. And with YouTube and various systems where you can learn things, we actually have better tools for learning than we've ever had in the history of the world. We can end up with a lot of really smart, effective people. But that shouldn't mean that they have to go to university and pay for that certification that says that they know that thing. University costs have skyrocketed. And now we've got, in the U.S. anyway, a generation of people who are in debt for their education. We start them out stifled with massive debt. That is terrible. And the solution isn't to make college free. That is a terrible idea. We should make education available to all, and that's being done. The university is an outmoded institution. And people can still get together and have the hard questions, but the basic knowledge is no longer a big secret. It used to be that most people couldn't read, and going to college entered you into this upper class of special people. And that kind of classism is old. It's disgusting. It used to be, that's what keeps all the wealth in one family. Instead, we should look for the people who are best at doing things and have them be getting the jobs. And we certainly shouldn't have this classism where people with college degrees are somehow better. We should look at the trades again and say, we need trades here. Because the U.S. in particular has outsourced making anything. We have a bunch of people doing kind of ridiculous jobs that are completely unnecessary. And that's terrible for the society. You're just selling your country. America's sold out. And it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Now, I don't know a lot about Europe. I know Europeans love to criticize Americans. But I know they have a lot of the same problems. And a lot of their money came from the empires that they had before, which is a suspicious thing in and of itself. We could stop doing that. And that would help other countries build themselves up and have democratic institutions, have equality, and get rid of their own classist systems. Because even a place like India still has a caste system. And there's still horrible things that happen to people because they have to do it. You look at the sex trade. Nobody should feel desperate that that's the only thing that they can do. I'm fine with the sex trade. I haven't participated, but if that wants to exist, great. But it should be done by people doing it freely and safely. And that gets into the legal issues around it as well. If it's illegal, it's going to be bad. Any black market is bad. Anytime there's a vice crime, it's bad. The drug war is terrible. The best model for that is the Portugal model. And Oregon is now experimenting with that. It's a tough thing because some people have a moral issue. It's actually, religious enforcement of religious law, that's even illegal, although a lot of it was also classist and racist as well. When you look at Richard Nixon declaring the drug war, and then that's been continued by the Republicans and Democrats as a way to oppress people. Now, drugs might be bad for you, but the pharmaceutical companies have them. We don't mind that. They profit big time. And the medical system supports that. So I think people can make their own decisions about their own body, and some of them will make ones we think are really dumb. And we might want to offer them help. That makes perfect sense to me. But we've got some of the worst drugs being legal, like tobacco and alcohol, and they should be legal. But a lot of people have a problem with that. I mean, tobacco seems like a dumb drug to me, and alcohol is extremely dangerous. It's a highly abused drug. I know that on a personal level. And so now you see something like marijuana is finally being legalized, and we're realizing maybe it's not the best thing for everybody to do. But it's not really that bad, People don't, go mad with the reefer. Here in Mexico, they're looking at legalizing it, and I hope they do. And I hope they do it right, because you should be able to grow your own plants. I mean, it's a plant. And it doesn't make you dangerous, No, you shouldn't drive when you're intoxicated. That makes sense to me. But, even making alcohol illegal, we learned that the hard way, that it just results in police corruption. It doesn't make the alcohol go away at all. It makes the alcohol less quality. In fact, the U.S. government poisoned alcohol. They poisoned people. How terrible is that? I know these are complex issues, and I'll probably piss pretty much everyone off with something I say. But I gotta say what I'm gonna say. And if you pick a thing that you disagree with me on, that's fine, but don't hate me entirely, please. My heart is in the right place. I want a peaceful, prosperous world. I want your children to have a good world. And I have a lot of thought behind the things I think. I don't just read something and then spout it off. I read people who disagree with me, and I think that's very important. If you don't understand your theoretical enemy's point of view, you're not really thinking. You're just part of a group. And I know the temptation there is probably, you want to be accepted by your group. If I'm accepted by no group in the world because of some one thing I said that they disagree with or something, well, then I'll just be alone in the forest, and, I would rather be. I don't want to live in a shitty world of people just attacking each other and hating each other rather than discussing things in a civil way. We can measure things. We have more scientific knowledge than ever before. We don't have to be controlled by religions and, traditions from thousands of years ago made by kind of horrible people. We could still fight slavery in the world. There's still slavery. And we could not blame any one culture for that kind of stuff, because every culture in the world did really horrible things. Where I live in Mexico, there are actually really probably no indigenous people, like no first peoples that were the first to show up there. Everybody attacked everybody. There were empires that rose and fell. There's a long history. It wasn't just a bunch of brown people sitting around being peaceful. They've raped, they killed, did human sacrifice. It's not like people here were better than the Europeans. And the Europeans did all sorts of horrible stuff. And the Africans did all sorts of horrible stuff. And the Asians did all sorts of horrible stuff. You know, Genghis Khan was probably no picnic. Genghis Khan, by the way, managed to transfer more of his genes into more of the human population than any other man in the world. Quite impressive, except based on probably a lot of evil and rape. So, not so great. So if you think that some culture is the big bad one, like, you know, the color of my skin makes me the evil people now, then study some history and look around at how things actually worked in the world. Empires rose, empires fell. Very few, like, magically good cultures out there. So become aware and try not to be a bigot.